The Legend of Drizzt. Act 2. The Outcast Years. Welcome back, traveler. I hope you rested well. When we last left our tale, Drizzt Do'Urden had made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He had fled Menzoberranzan, left behind his house, his family, his entire civilization. The only world he had ever known. And now he was alone in the Underdark. Truly, utterly alone. For the first time in his life. What comes next is not a tale of heroic adventure. At least not at first. What comes next is a story of survival. Of isolation so profound it nearly destroys the soul. Of a young drow struggling to hold on to his sanity and his principles, when there is no one to witness either. This is the story of the Outcast years. The decade that transformed Drizzt from a conflicted warrior into the hero he would become. So settle in. This is a longer part of the journey, and in many ways the hardest. But it's also where we truly come to understand who Drizzt is when no one is watching. The first days into the wild Underdark. Imagine, if you will, what it means to be alone in the Underdark. Not alone as you might be alone on a quiet street, or alone in your home. Alone in a realm of endless darkness, where every sound could be a predator, where the stone beneath your feet might give way to a chasm that drops for miles, where the air itself can be poisonous in certain caverns. Drizzt ran for days after leaving Menzoberranzan. He ran until his legs burned, until his lungs ached, until he was certain no patrol from House Do'Urden could follow. He ran through tunnels he had never seen, past underground rivers that roared like thunder, across bridges of natural stone so narrow that one misstep would mean death. And then, finally, when exhaustion overtook him, when he could run no more, he stopped. And in that moment, the reality of what he had done crashed over him like a wave.
What have I done? What have I done?
He was free. For the first time in his life, truly free. No matron to command him, no society to judge him, no expectations to fulfill. But freedom in the Underdark is not the freedom of open skies and endless horizons. It's the freedom of the hunted animal, the freedom to starve, to be killed, to die alone in the dark with no one to know or care. Drizzt made camp, if you could call it that, in a small cave barely large enough for him to sit upright. He had his scimitars, Twinkle and Icing Death. He had a small pack with some dried mushroom bread, a water skin, and a few basic supplies he'd managed to grab before fleeing. And he had his thoughts. Oh, and what thoughts they were.
Zaknafein is dead. My father is dead because of me. Because I couldn't. Because I wouldn't.
Survivor's guilt is a terrible thing. Drizzt knew intellectually that Zaknafein had made his own choice. That his father had sacrificed himself willingly, even gladly, to give his son a chance at a different life. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. And in that cave, in that first moment of stillness after the chaos of escape, Drizzt felt the full weight of his father's death. The last person in all the world who had understood him, who had loved him, gone.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
He wept then, alone in the dark, where no one could see weakness, where no one could judge tears as shameful, Drizzt Do'Urden wept for his father. And perhaps that was the first truly free thing he ever did. To grieve openly, to feel deeply, to be vulnerable without fear. But grief, as necessary as it is, cannot sustain you in the Underdark. Eventually you must eat. You must find water. You must stay alert, or you will die. And so, after allowing himself that moment of sorrow, Drizzt dried his eyes, checked his weapons, and prepared to face the reality of his new existence. He was a fugitive in the most dangerous realm in all the world, and he had no idea how to survive. Learning to survive. The drow of Menzoberranzan are formidable warriors, but they're not wilderness survivors. They live in a city. They have servants, slaves, and infrastructure. Food is provided. Water is drawn from underground lakes by others. Shelter is a given. Drizzt had been trained to fight, extensively trained. He could duel a master swordsman. He could read tactical situations. He could lead a patrol through known tunnels. But could he hunt an Underdark creature for food? Could he tell which mushrooms were edible and which would kill him? Could he find safe water in a realm where rivers sometimes ran with acid? No, not at first. The Underdark has its own ecosystem, strange as that may sound. Massive fungi, some as tall as trees, grow in certain caverns where phosphorescent lichen provides dim light. Fish that have never seen the sun swim in underground lakes, their bodies pale and eyeless. Roffe, shaggy herd animals similar to oxen, graze on the fungi in vast caverns, tended by whatever creatures claim that territory. And then there are the predators. Hook horrors, massive insectoid creatures with hooks for hands and a screech that can paralyze prey. Carrion crawlers, disgusting worm-like things that inject paralytic venom. Purple worms, legendary burrowing monsters the size of a building. And worse things. So many worse things. Drizzt's first kill as a free drow was a giant rat. Not a normal rat, mind you. Rats in the Underdark grow to the size of dogs, with teeth like daggers and a viciousness born of constant hunger. He had been tracking along a narrow ledge, trying to find his way to what he hoped was a water source, when he heard the squeaking. 3 of them, emerging from a crack in the stone, their red eyes gleaming in the darkness. Now, Drizzt could have easily killed 3 giant rats in Menzoberranzan, but he had never been hungry when he fought, never been exhausted, never been alone with no backup, no escape route, no city to return to. Fear changes things, and Drizzt was afraid.
Easy. Easy now. I don't want your territory. I'm just passing through.
The rats, naturally, did not respond to reason. They charged as one, a coordinated attack that spoke to pack intelligence. Drizzt drew his scimitars in a fluid motion, muscle memory from countless hours of training. The first rat leapt at his throat. He sidestepped, brought Twinkle around in an arc that caught it mid-leap. The blade bit deep, and the creature fell. The second came low, trying to hamstring him. Icing death flashed down, and another rat died. But the third, the largest, crashed into him from the side. Drizzt went down hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. The rat was on him immediately, jaws snapping for his throat. He got an arm up just in time, felt teeth sink into his forearm through his armor. The pain was immediate and sharp. With his other hand, he drove Twinkle up under the creature's jaw. It spasmed once and went still. Drizzt lay there for a moment, breathing hard, his arm bleeding, the body of the rat heavy on his chest. And then he started to laugh. Not humor exactly, more like the release of tension, the relief of survival. He was alive. He had won. And he had meat for his next meal. The descent into savagery. The next few years were hard. Harder than anything Drizzt had ever experienced. He learned to hunt, to track, to find water and shelter. He learned which fungi were safe to eat and which would make him violently ill. He learned to sleep with one eye open, to trust his instincts, to move through the darkness like a ghost. But he also learned something darker. He learned how easy it is to lose yourself when there's no society to hold you accountable, no witnesses to your actions, no one to judge whether you're living according to your principles or abandoning them for expediency. The Underdark is a realm without mercy, and it doesn't care about your moral code. Kill or be killed. Eat or starve. Survive or die. Everything else is luxury. And Drizzt, for all his training, for all his principles, was still just a person, trying to stay alive in the most hostile environment imaginable. He began to slip. Small things at first, taking down prey more brutally than necessary, eating without thinking about the life he'd taken, moving through the tunnels with his emotions shut down, existing in a state of pure survival instinct. Then, bigger things. He stopped talking to himself, stopped processing his thoughts through language. He moved on all fours sometimes, when it was more efficient. He ate raw meat because cooking would attract attention. He became, in many ways, more animal than person, more hunter than thinking being. This is the part of Drizzt's story that doesn't get talked about much. The part where the hero nearly lost himself, where isolation and the constant pressure of survival eroded his humanity, his sense of self. He spent nearly 6 years in this state. 6 years of existing rather than living. 6 years of forgetting why he had fled Menzoberranzan in the first place. What woke him from this descent wasn't some dramatic event or sudden revelation. It was something much simpler. He found the onyx figurine in his pack one day, the one that could summon Guenhwyvar. He had stopped calling her, stopped thinking about her, because on some level he knew that if she saw what he had become, it would break his heart. But on this day, in a moment of weakness or strength, he wasn't sure which, he spoke the command word.
Guenhwyvar.
The magical panther appeared in a swirl of grey mist, as magnificent and powerful as ever. She looked at Drizzt, her green eyes studying him with an intelligence that went beyond any normal animal. And then she did something she had never done before. She turned away from him. Not in rejection, exactly. More like disappointment. She wouldn't look at him. And Drizzt, seeing himself through her eyes, seeing what he had become, felt shame for the first time in years.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my friend. I've forgotten myself. I've forgotten everything.
Narrator, empathetic. Guenhwyvar turned back then, slowly, as if giving him a chance, as if saying without words that it wasn't too late, that he could still find his way back. And Drizzt, kneeling in the darkness with his only friend, made a choice. The same choice his father had made, the same choice he had made when he fled Menzoberranzan. The choice to be more than his circumstances demanded, to hold on to his principles, even when no one was watching, to remain Drizzt Do'Urden, a person with a conscience, rather than becoming just another predator in the dark. The long climb back.
Recovery from that kind of descent isn't instant. You don't just decide to be better and suddenly become better. It takes work, conscious, deliberate work. Drizzt started small. He began talking again, out loud, to Guenhwyvar and to himself, processing his thoughts through language, thinking rather than just reacting. He started meditating again, something Zaknafein had taught him, a way to center himself and reconnect with his principles. He hunted with more mindfulness, taking only what he needed, killing as cleanly as possible. He even started marking time again, keeping track of days and months, reminding himself that he was part of a larger world, not just an isolated point of existence in the dark. And slowly, over the course of months, he clawed his way back to himself, back to being Drizzt. But he also realized something important during this process. He couldn't stay in the Underdark, not forever. The isolation was killing him. Maybe not physically, but in every way that mattered. He needed connection, needed purpose, needed to be around other people, even if those people feared and hated him. Because being alone in the darkness was worse than any rejection the surface world could offer.
Finding the surface. The journey from the deep Underdark to the surface is not a simple matter of walking upward. The tunnels twist and turn, branch and dead end. Some routes are controlled by hostile creatures, others are simply impassable. But Drizzt was determined. With Guenhwyvar at his side and his scimitars at his hips, he began the long climb toward the light. He had heard stories, of course. Every drow child hears stories about the world above. The realm of blinding light, they call it. A place where the sky is endless and exposed, where there's no stone ceiling overhead for comfort, where the sun burns like the fire of 1,000,000 torches. Drow are creatures of darkness, after all. Sunlight hurts their eyes, burns their skin if they're exposed too long. Most drow consider the surface world a hostile, alien place. But Drizzt had spent years in the Underdark, years surviving alone, and he had learned something important. Home isn't where you're born. Home is where you choose to belong. And if he couldn't belong in Menzoberranzan, if he couldn't belong in the Underdark, then perhaps he could belong somewhere in that mythical world above.
It took him almost a year to find his way upward, a year of cautiously ascending through increasingly unfamiliar territory. The air began to change as he climbed, losing the heavy, stale quality of the deep tunnels. It started to move, to flow, carrying scents he had never experienced before. Green things, growing things, water that fell from above rather than pooling in lakes. And then, one evening, he rounded a corner in a natural tunnel and saw it. Light. Not the dim phosphorescence of fungi or the glow of magical crystals. Real light, filtering down from somewhere above. The last light of day, he would later learn. Sunset. He approached carefully, his eyes aching even from this distant glow. The tunnel opened into a cave entrance, and beyond that entrance Drizzt could see trees. Actual trees, growing up from soil rather than stone. A forest in the fading light of day. He stood at that threshold for a long time. Guenhwyvar pressed against his leg, both of them staring at this alien new world. And then, taking a deep breath, Drizzt Do'Urden stepped out of the Underdark and into the surface world for the first time in his life.
The surface world. The surface world was overwhelming in ways Drizzt hadn't anticipated. The space, first of all. The sheer openness of it. No ceiling overhead. Just endless sky, stretching in all directions. It made him feel exposed, vulnerable, like a target painted on stone. The sounds were different too. Wind moving through leaves, birds singing, their calls strange and musical. The rustle of small animals moving through underbrush. And the smells, earth and growing things, and the clean scent of rain. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. But the worst part, the part that made him retreat back into the cave that first day, was the light. Even the dim light of the moon and stars was too much for eyes adapted to the Underdark. His head pounded, his eyes watered. Every instinct screamed at him to flee back to the comfortable darkness below. But he didn't flee. Not this time. He had come too far, survived too much, to give up now. So he waited in the cave during the day, and at night, when the sun was down and the moon provided gentler illumination, he ventured out. Slowly, carefully, learning to navigate this new world one step at a time. He spent the next several years in those woods, the forest on the surface above the Underdark he had escaped from. He never ventured far from the cave system at first. It was his lifeline, his escape route if things went wrong. He learned to hunt surface animals, deer and rabbits and wild pigs, creatures that moved differently than Underdark predators, that required different tracking techniques. He learned which surface plants were edible, which were useful, which were dangerous. He learned the rhythms of the seasons, something that didn't exist in the timeless dark below. Spring and summer, and fall and winter, each with their own challenges and gifts. And he learned to endure the sun. That was the hardest part. Day by day he exposed himself to a little more light. At first just the pre-dawn glow, then the full sunrise, but from the shade of the trees. Eventually, for brief periods, full daylight. It hurt. Always. His eyes watered constantly, and he developed a perpetual headache. But he adapted. The drow body is resilient, and over time Drizzt's eyes adjusted enough to function in daylight, though it never stopped being uncomfortable. He wore a hood when he could, kept to the shadows, moved primarily at dawn and dusk. But he could survive on the surface. That was the important thing. The meeting with Mooshie. It was during his 4th year on the surface that Drizzt encountered the person who would change his life. He had been living in a particular grove, a beautiful clearing with a small pond fed by a spring. It was peaceful there, comfortable, He had started to think of it as home. Then one day, he returned from a hunt to find an old man sitting by his campfire, calmly roasting a fish on a stick. The old man was human, clearly. Tall and broad-shouldered despite his age, with a wild mane of grey hair and a beard that reached his chest. He wore simple ranger's garb, leather and wool, all in forest greens and browns, and in his hands he held a simple wooden staff. This was Montolio Debrouchee, Mooshie to his friends, a ranger of considerable skill, who had retired to these woods to live out his remaining years in peace. Oh, and one more thing. He was completely blind.
Ye can put the blades away, Dark Elf. If I meant ye harm, ye'd already be dead.
How did you... You can't see me. How do you know what I am?
Can't see with me eyes, true enough. Lost them 30 years back fighting orcs. But I see in other ways. I can smell ye. Drow have a distinct scent, like smoky flowers. I can hear the way ye move, too quiet for most surface folk. And I can sense your uncertainty, your fear that I'll try to kill ye on sight.
Drizzt lowered his weapons slowly, but he didn't sheath them. He'd been alone too long to trust easily.
If you know what I am, then you know my people.
Are evil? I know the stories. Drow are raiders, slavers, demon worshippers. But I also know that stories ain't the whole truth. And I've been watching ye for a month now, Dark Elf. Ye haven't raided anyone. Ye haven't hurt anything that wasn't trying to hurt ye first. Ye just been living, peaceful-like.
It was the first time since his father's death that someone had seen Drizzt, truly seen him, and not just assumed the worst. The first time someone had judged him by his actions rather than his heritage.
You've been watching me.
This is me grove, lad. Or it was, until ye set up camp. But there's room enough for two, I reckon, and I could use the company. Gets lonely talking to the birds all day.
And just like that, with no dramatics, no grand pronouncements, Drizzt found a teacher, a friend, a second father of sorts. Mooshie taught him the ways of the ranger, how to track prey by sound and scent, how to move through the forest without disturbing the natural order, how to speak to animals, not literally, but through patient observation and respect.
A ranger isn't just a warrior in the woods, lad. A ranger is a guardian. Ye protect the balance. Ye fight when ye must, but ye preserve when ye can.
And Drizzt, who had spent 10 years in exile trying to define who he was and what he stood for, found in Mooshie's teachings a philosophy that resonated deep in his soul. They lived together in that grove for nearly a year, training, talking, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. Two people who had found peace in each other's company. Mooshie told Drizzt about the surface world, about humans and elves and dwarves and halflings, about kingdoms and wars and heroes, about good people and bad people, and all the complicated folks in between.
The world judges ye by what ye look like, lad. That's the truth of it. Ye've got the skin of a drow, so folks'll assume ye're evil. But here's what I learned in me years. Assumptions are for lazy thinkers. Smart folks judge by actions, and your actions, they speak to a good heart.
Do you really believe that? That I can be judged as an individual, not as a drow?
I believe you've already proven it, lad. You just need to find others wise enough to see it.
It was during his time with Mooshie that Drizzt truly became a ranger, not just in skill, but in philosophy. The principles he had clung to in the darkness found a new expression in the light. Protection, balance, respect for life. But Mooshie was old, very old, and the world has a way of taking away the things we love. Endings and beginnings. One morning, about a year after they'd met, Drizzt found Mooshie sitting by the pond, staring out at nothing with his blind eyes. Something in his posture spoke of finality.
Sit with me a bit, lad.
Drizzt sat. Guenhwyvar, sensing the moment, padded over and lay her massive head in Mooshie's lap. The old ranger smiled and scratched behind her ears.
I'm dying, Drizzt. Not today. Maybe not this month. But soon, I can feel it. Don't look so stricken. I've lived a long life, and a good one, better than most get.
Mooshie,
Ye've been the best thing about these last years. You know that. Teaching ye. Watching ye grow into the ranger I knew ye could be. Ye gave an old man purpose again.
They sat in silence for a while, just being present with each other. Finally, Mooshie spoke again.
Ye've been hiding in these woods long enough, lad. It's time you went out into the world. Time you found your place among people.
They'll fear me, hate me. I'm a drow, Mooshie. To them, I'm a monster.
To some, aye. Maybe even to most, at first. But not to all. There are good people out there, Drizzt. People who'll judge ye fair. You just have to find them. And you have to give them the chance to know ye.
Mooshie died 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. Drizzt buried him in the grove under a willow tree, with his wooden staff marking the grave. And once again Drizzt was alone. But this time he wasn't the same person who had fled Menzoberranzan. He had been shaped by his experiences, by solitude, by Guenhwyvar's companionship, by Mooshie's teachings. He had become Drizzt Do'Urden, Ranger. Not Drizzt Do'Urden, Drow. Not Drizzt Do'Urden, Exile. Just Drizzt. And following Mooshie's final advice, Drizzt packed his few belongings, called Guenhwyvar to his side, and set out from the grove. He turned his steps north and east, toward a place Mooshie had told him about. A harsh land of tundra and mountains. A place called Icewind Dale, where 10 towns struggled to survive in the frozen wastes, where people judged you more by your ability to swing a sword or endure the cold than by the color of your skin. A place where, perhaps, a dark elf ranger might find acceptance, might find friends, might find a home. But that, dear traveller, is a story for Act 3. Rest now. We've covered a decade in the span of an hour, and there's more tale yet to tell. When you're ready, we'll continue to Icewind Dale, where Drizzt will meet the companions who will change his life forever.